106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We've got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes, it's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it. In 1980, the Blues Brothers crashed its way into theaters, not just with music and comedy, but with actual smashed storefronts, wrecked police cars, and a cast of music legends who refused to fake a single note. It was a movie born in chaos, made on chaos, and somehow miraculously held together by chaos. But behind the gospel choirs, mall chases, and deadpan sunglasses were some of the strangest stories you've ever heard from a Hollywood set. Here are 20 weird, wild, and absolutely true facts about the Blues Brothers, and trust me, by the end, you'll understand why no film like it could ever be made again. 1. The script was written in madness. Dan Aykroyd didn't have an office. He didn't even have a desk. The first version of the script was typed up in hotel rooms, on buses, backstage during Saturday Night Live gigs, anywhere the band had a break. The earliest idea was completely unfilmable. Jake and Elwood would time travel through different music eras, ending up in ancient Egypt. Universal Studios freaked out. They brought in director John Landis, who cut the time travel but kept the insane energy. Then John Belushi read the revised script and called it boring. 3 rewrites later, Aykroyd turned in a 324-page monster, no formatting, just block text. Executives passed it around as a joke, but buried inside was the movie we know today. 2. The music was dead serious. Aykroyd and Belushi weren't just playing dress-up as bluesmen. They were on a mission to honor the genre. They spent months in Chicago's South Side, learning from real musicians whose careers had faded. Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Cab Calloway. These weren't cameos. They were pillars of the music. Matt "Guitar" Murphy, who plays Aretha's husband in the film, had played with Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. And here's the kicker. Every performance was live. No lip-syncing. What you saw on screen was exactly what came through the microphones. 3. They smashed a world record for car wrecks. At the time, no movie had ever destroyed more vehicles. The Blues Brothers wrecked 103 cars, buying up every 1974 Dodge Monaco police cruiser they could find. The record stood for decades. The budget for the car chases alone was bigger than some films' entire production costs. 4. Belushi's sunglasses were a hangover hack. Those iconic Ray-Ban Wayfarers? Not a stylistic choice at first. Belushi wore them because he was often hungover and couldn't stand bright lights. During the rawhide scene, he couldn't take them off without his eyes watering, so Landis told him to keep them on. It looked cool, sales of Wayfarers shot up 2,000%, and Ray-Ban eventually made a Blues Brothers special edition. 5. The Nazi rally scene got real. Filmed in Skokie, Illinois, the scene was meant to mock hate groups. But word got out and real neo-Nazis showed up, thinking they were invited. Holocaust survivors living nearby came to watch the mockery unfold. The cast and crew were threatened, security was tightened, and the moment where the Blues Mobile drives through the crowd? One take only because no one wanted to risk it twice. 6. Carrie Fisher was a pyromaniac, sort of. Fisher's unnamed mystery woman wasn't in the original script. She was added to give her something totally different from Princess Leia. She suggested some of her own weapons, including the flamethrower, and insisted on doing her own stunts. During one take, she accidentally set the wrong car on fire. The gas station explosion she leads cost $50,000 and took 3 days to set up. 7. Real cops, who didn't know it was a comedy. Chicago police wouldn't loan cars for the movie, but the Illinois State Police did, without realizing how ridiculous the chase scenes would be. Some real officers even appear in the film. During the huge pile-up, a few laughed so hard they ruined takes. 8. SNL's future was on the line. Universal made Saturday Night Live boss Lorne Michaels personally guarantee the movie wouldn't spiral out of control. If it went over budget, SNL would pay for it, which could have bankrupted the show. And then Belushi vanished for 3 days during filming. Michaels flew to Chicago to find him. Luckily, the movie was a hit, and it proved SNL cast members could headline movies. 9. The penguin scene was improvised. In the original Blues Brothers script, the orphanage scenes were meant to be straightforward, almost sentimental moments. Jake and Elwood returning to the place that raised them, setting up the emotional core of their mission from God. But that changed the moment Kathleen Freeman stepped into the habit. Freeman, a veteran character actress with decades of comedic and dramatic work, had grown up in a strict Catholic environment. She knew exactly how to channel those nuns who could command silence in a room with just one raised eyebrow. The script gave her a few simple lines, but Freeman decided the scene needed something more physical, something that instantly showed the Blues Brothers' complicated relationship with authority. Out came the wooden ruler. What followed was entirely unscripted. Freeman, in full penguin mode, began smacking the ruler against her desk and the boys' hands, stepping forward with the precision of a drill sergeant. She timed her strikes to interrupt their lines, cutting them off mid-sentence. The shock you see on Belushi and Aykroyd's faces wasn't acting, it was genuine surprise. At one point, Freeman chased them backward out of her office, still swinging the ruler. Landis, loving the chaos, kept the cameras rolling. Freeman's commitment to authenticity went beyond the ruler. She used the walk, posture, and clipped speech patterns of real nuns she'd known. Her costume, an old-fashioned, floor-length habit with a stiff, starched wimple, was accurate down to the last pleat, giving her a looming, almost supernatural presence on screen. Combined with the dim lighting and echoing sound design, the orphanage office became more intimidating than any car chase in the movie. Ironically, when the Catholic Church first saw the scene, they weren't thrilled. Some thought it was disrespectful. But once audiences roared with laughter, the backlash softened. Many viewers who'd been through Catholic school said Freeman nailed it. The sharp discipline, the humorless authority, the way you could be smacked 1 second and handed a blessing the next. In the end, what was meant to be a simple expositional beat became one of the film's most quoted moments. Thanks to Freeman's improv, the Penguin became an icon in her own right, proving that in the Blues Brothers, even the quiet, stationary scenes could pack as much punch as a 100-car pileup. 10. The concert was real. Hundreds of locals showed up, dressed for a night out, completely unaware that they were about to be immortalized on the big screen. They weren't told to act like they were enjoying themselves. When Jake and Elwood took the stage, backed by the full Blues Brothers band, the audience's cheers, whistles, and applause were spontaneous, unprompted, and utterly genuine. This wasn't a simple lip-synced playback either. Belushi and Aykroyd had been performing as the Blues Brothers for years before the movie, honing their act in clubs and even releasing a best-selling album. They knew how to work a crowd. The set list for the shoot was played live, with the same raw energy as their actual tours. The musicians, legends in their own right, fed off the audience's excitement, pushing the performance even higher. Some fans came purely for the music, with no idea they'd be caught on camera. Months later, many were stunned to see themselves on the silver screen, dancing and shouting in the front rows. A few even turned their fleeting appearances into local bragging rights. "I'm the one yelling during Everybody Needs Somebody to Love." Filming a real concert wasn't without its challenges. Coordinating lighting, camera moves, and sound recording in a live setting meant the crew had to work with military precision while staying invisible to the audience. At the same time, the performers had to keep the energy up take after take without losing momentum. But that authenticity paid off. The Palace Hotel ballroom sequence crackles with electricity because it was electric. You can see the sweat, hear the strain in the voices, and feel the genuine connection between the performers and the crowd. It's not just a scene. It's a time capsule of a moment when a fictional band and a real audience came together to make cinema history. 11. The mall chase was engineered like a heist. The Dixie Square Mall sequence in the Blues Brothers isn't just one of the wildest set pieces in the film. It's one of the most outrageous mall chases ever put on screen. By the late 1970s, the once bustling shopping center in Harvey, Illinois, had been abandoned for years. Dust collected on mannequins in window displays, escalators sat frozen mid-step, and faded store signs hung like relics of another era. For most, it was an eyesore. For John Landis and his crew, it was a playground. Because the mall was already empty, the filmmakers didn't have to worry about disrupting business. But that didn't mean they could simply smash through it without a plan. The destruction you see in the movie was meticulously engineered. Stunt coordinators and engineers spent weeks mapping out every car's path, calculating speeds, entry angles, and collision points to ensure maximum chaos on screen without endangering drivers. 40 professional stunt drivers were brought in for the scene, each with specific cues and timing. One driver might burst through a plate glass storefront at precisely the moment another car plowed into a kiosk, while two more whipped around a corner in opposite directions. Every beat had to be perfect. One wrong move could mean wrecking a key prop too early, or worse, causing a pileup that injured the crew. The mall itself became an unexpected character in the film. Store names and displays were left intact, creating the surreal image of squad cars roaring past toy stores and boutiques. The sound of screeching tires echoed off the tiled floors, while fluorescent lights flickered overhead, giving the whole sequence a grimy, almost apocalyptic edge. Local residents came out to watch the mayhem from safe vantage points, treating the shoot like a public spectacle. In a town that had watched the mall's decline for years, seeing it reborn, even just to be destroyed, was oddly satisfying. When filming wrapped, the Dixie Square Mall was in worse shape than ever. Promises to clean up were vague, and the building was left as a wreck until it was finally demolished decades later. On film, though, it lives forever. An abandoned shopping center turned into a cinematic demolition derby, perfectly embodying the Blues Brothers blend of precision chaos. 12. Aykroyd went method. Aykroyd didn't just act the part, he lived it. He studied Chicago blues history, interviewed musicians, and even learned to play harmonica for real. On set, he stayed in character as Elwood Blues, never breaking the voice or mannerisms. 13. The budget was out of control. Planned at $17 million, it ballooned to nearly $30 million, making it one of the most expensive comedies ever at the time. Universal nearly shut it down multiple times, but Landis fought to keep the spectacle intact. 14. The Blues Brothers became a real band. After filming, Belushi and Aykroyd toured as the Blues Brothers with their movie band. They sold out venues, and their album briefcase full of blues hit #1 on the Billboard charts. 15. They changed how car chases were filmed. Multiple cameras, precise stunt coordination, comedic timing, the Blues Brothers rewrote the car chase playbook. Future films like Beverly Hills Cop and Rush Hour studied its techniques. 16. The studio wanted different leads. Universal considered other comedy duos for the leads, fearing SNL actors couldn't carry a movie. Thankfully, Belushi and Aykroyd's real-life friendship and musical chemistry won out. 17. Chicago became a character. No major film had ever showcased Chicago like this. From the South Side blues clubs to downtown skyscrapers, the city's locations were chosen for cultural importance. Tourism surged after the film's release. 18. The sound design was revolutionary. Recording live music for film was tricky, but the team figured out how to blend raw performances with clear dialogue. The techniques they developed became industry standards. 19. It created a new subgenre. Before the Blues Brothers, the movie musical had a fairly predictable formula. Most were built around lighthearted stories, romance-driven plots, and original songs written specifically for the film. From Singin' in the Rain to The Sound of Music, musicals were polished productions designed to sweep audiences into a glossy, dreamlike world. Even in the 1970s, when the genre began to experiment with rock, Jesus Christ Superstar, Tommy, the idea of a musical still usually meant a scripted, choreographed fantasy. The Blues Brothers blew that tradition to pieces. Instead of writing new tunes, Dan Aykroyd and John Landis packed the soundtrack with existing rhythm and blues standards, songs that had decades of history behind them. And rather than casting actors who could kind of sing, they brought in the legends themselves: Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Ray Charles, Cab Calloway. These weren't cameos for novelty's sake. They were living embodiments of the culture the film celebrated. The movie treated those musical performances not as side dishes to the comedy, but as the main course. When James Brown delivers his fiery church sermon, it's shot and edited like a revival meeting, complete with sweat, shouts, and swaying bodies. When Aretha belts out "Think" in her diner, the energy is raw and defiant, captured in live takes that refuse to stick to a pre-recorded playback. Even Cab Calloway's Minnie the Moocher was presented exactly as he had performed it for decades, resisting studio pressure to update it with disco beats. And surrounding all this musical authenticity, complete absurdity. Car chases that wrecked over 100 vehicles. A mysterious, heavily armed woman trying to kill Jake Blues for reasons never fully explained. Police, Illinois Nazis, and even a marching band all chasing two deadpan men in suits and sunglasses. The result was something brand new, a hybrid of concert film, slapstick comedy, and cultural time capsule. It respected the heritage of the music without sanitizing it, introducing young audiences to the blues while wrapping it in the most anarchic road movie imaginable. In doing so, the Blues Brothers didn't just refresh the musical genre, it carved out an entirely new subgenre, the music comedy that takes its songs seriously, even when everything else is completely ridiculous. 20. The legacy still resonates. The Blues Brothers didn't just entertain, it preserved a piece of American cultural heritage at a time when the blues was slipping from mainstream consciousness. By 1980, many of the genre's greats had been sidelined by the music industry, their records out of print, their gigs reduced to small clubs. Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi set out to change that. By casting legends like Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Cab Calloway, and Ray Charles not as nostalgic cameos but as integral parts of the story, the film reintroduced their music to a younger generation who might never have heard it otherwise. The ripple effect was enormous. Album sales for the featured artists spiked. Venues started booking older blues musicians again. For some, the movie reignited careers that had been quietly fading. It also gave the blues, and by extension, African-American musical history, a new spotlight in popular culture, wrapped inside a chaotic comedy that made it accessible to audiences who wouldn't normally buy a ticket to a music movie. And the legacy didn't stop at the US. In Melbourne, Australia, the Blues Brothers transcended cinema entirely and became a weekly ritual. At the Valhalla Cinema, the film ran every Friday and Saturday night. Not for weeks, not for months, but for years. Fans turned up in black suits, skinny ties, and dark sunglasses, emulating Jake and Elwood as if they were part of the band. Some carried harmonicas, others brought their own tambourines. Many could recite every line of dialogue and every lyric, delivering them in perfect sync with the screen. The screenings became less like movie nights and more like concerts or religious gatherings, complete with call-and-response moments, cheering, and dancing in the aisles. First-timers were often stunned to find themselves in the middle of a full-blown performance event, where the audience knew exactly when to shout, "We're on a mission from God," or clap in rhythm to "Everybody Needs Somebody to Love." What began as an offbeat Hollywood gamble ended up creating a worldwide cult phenomenon. For some, the Blues Brothers was just a film. For others, it was a cultural lifeline, a way to keep the blues alive, celebrate its legends, and find a community in two men, a battered car, and a mission from God.